Well, I'm delighted to welcome The Athletic's Tottenham correspondent to the show, Charlie Eccleshare. Thank you for joining us, Charlie. And I suppose for someone who follows Tottenham, can you actually remember a couple of weeks quite like this one?
No, it's been extraordinary. And I can't believe it's 2 weeks ago, that Southampton game. It feels like, honestly, another world. So much has happened. Yeah, it's just been one thing after another. I mean, Conte going, then the director of football, Paratici, gets banned from football by FIFA. I mean, just, yeah, utterly extraordinary. And I think everyone connected with Spurs is quite looking forward to having an actual match of football on Monday. Feels like it's been a while.
That definitely feels like that. I think, Stephen, following on from that press conference, did actually Conte leave the club no choice?
Yeah, to a certain degree, I don't think he did. But I think from the fans' point of view, I think they felt it was a decision that had to be made. I think you just listen to watch the VT there of everyone talking about it. I think there was mixed opinions on what they thought. Me personally, I thought it was a point where he just reached the end point where it was like, there's nothing else we can do. I can do as a manager. I think it was Dion said there, I want him to tell me to my face.
Yeah.
I think he has. I think he's already done that. But then it's getting to the point now where it's like, well, what's the next step to take? The next step is to publicly out the players and see if I get a response in that way. But I think he just overstepped the mark when it was aimed at the ownership of the club then. Okay. That's where you've got to be careful.
Yeah. But then thinking that because then Christian Stellini is in place now, do you think he's come out and said the club are not in crisis? Do you think they are, Glenn?
Well, when you look at the Premier League,
yeah,
they're not, and it's in their hands. They play everyone around them, so if they can put good performances in and get some wins, they will finish in the Champions League places. I think Stellini's won 4 out of his 6 games in charge, so the players clearly like playing for him. I wouldn't say they're in crisis yet. I'll give it a few more weeks and see what's happened. But with Spurs, you just never know what's going to happen. But I would like to say that I am disappointed to see Conte go. I feel as though he's a character of the game, and I thought he was a good addition to the Premier League. And I think that rant will go down as iconic, even Kevin Keegan-esque.
Well, Charlie, what's the latest from inside the club following the FIFA confirmation of Fabio Paratici's 30-month ban from football?
Yeah, well, I mean, Paratici, statement went out from Spurs yesterday. He's stepping down from his duties until the appeal is heard on April 19th. So, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other soap opera in itself. And obviously, Paratici was leading the search for a replacement for Antonio Conte. So that's now a bit up in the air. And if you're a potential new manager for Spurs, you're probably looking at that and saying, well, this is a bit of an uncertain situation. So, yeah, I mean, either of those, the Conte story or Paratici, would have been huge in their own right. The fact they've come like bang, bang, one after the other, I think that's why there is this sense of crisis, even though they're 4th in the table, which, again, feels somehow impossible given everything that's gone on with them this season.
Well, I suppose, Charlie, where does this leave, then, the Levy master plan?
Yeah, well, there's no permanent manager of the men's team or the women's team, and the director of football is banned from football by FIFA. So it's not a great look at the moment. I mean, he's got a huge to-do list, a lot of things to sort out. Obviously, bringing in the new manager is one of the most pressing priorities. But yeah, there's also Harry Kane, uncertainty about his future. His contract expires next summer. So big questions for Levy to answer. And I think the Paratici situation as well, the fact that he wasn't banned by the club until this FIFA ban came, which follows the Italian FA banning him, I think that's been a tipping point for a lot of people who, even those who are fairly even-handed with Levy, I think now they're thinking, what's going on? You know, this is spiraling out of control.
Well, who do you think is in frame to take over this summer?
Well, Nagelsmann is someone that has a lot of admirers at Tottenham. They've tried to get him twice before and weren't able to do that. Obviously, Pochettino is a name you hear a lot. I think we'll have to wait and see on that one. But the issue is that they don't yet know if Paratici is going to be there, who's going to be the director of football. And those are big things for a manager, because the first question they're going to ask is, well, who am I going to be reporting into when it comes to recruitment and that sort of thing? Luis Enrique was someone, for instance, who Paratici's a big fan of, but we just don't know what say Paratici's going to have. So those are a few of the names, but there's a long time between now and the end of the season. And I think if you are an out-of-work manager, you're probably saying, I'm just going to wait and see, A, what develops with Spurs, but also with the various other clubs that might be looking for a new manager come the summer.
Yeah, Glenn, what sort of manager do you think Tottenham actually need when you look at that squad?
I think Tottenham need to strip it back, and they need a manager that's going to build something at Spurs. They've gone down the route of hiring big hitters, Mourinho, Conte, and it just hasn't worked for whatever reason. It doesn't matter now because it's on to the future, it's on to the next one. And for me, they need to build a squad and bring players through. And I think he mentioned there, I mean, the first question any proposed manager is going to ask is Harry Kane staying? So it's just a complete mess there at the minute. They need to sort Harry Kane out, and obviously then Pochettino's hanging over them, like the romantic one that I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans want. But listen, Conte had the same win percentage as him, so it just shows how it's differently perceived.
You said about Harry Kane as well. I suppose one of the big things, because when you look at their fixtures, they've got a huge April ahead of them. Is Stellini getting the best out of Son and getting his form back as well?
Well, it was interesting to see Son's comments this week, wasn't it? Said he felt sort of partly responsible for Conte's sacking because his form's been that poor. He hasn't stepped up to the plate and he hasn't performed at the highest level. I think what we all thought was going to happen was Richarlison would come in and push him, and it'd bring the best out of Kulusevski, out of Son, out of Harry Kane. There'd be a real mixture of sort of rotation in the way they play because they push each other on. But I don't think anyone saw the drop off of Son. Trying to get him back to his very best. I know he scored a couple of goals in the international break. He was good performances, but now it's trying to get the best out of him, and that is. It's so difficult just for any manager to get the best out of a player when they lose confidence. How do you instill that back into them? How do you find that belief? Sometimes it's down to the player.
Have you had those periods as a footballer?
Yeah.
How did you find it again?
I think you've got to be brave and go to see a psychologist and speak to someone about it. Sometimes it's going back to basics and stripping it back completely and playing simple football. But people expect so much of you. What do we expect from Son every week? We expect him to get the ball out of his feet, to score a magical goal, take 3-4 players on. But when your confidence is that low, you look up and you see them 3-4 players and you go, oh, I'm going to turn back, I'm going to play safe. Well, then the crowd start to get back on top of you, but you're trying to build your confidence back up. Such a difficult situation.
Do you not think that the balance of the team, the way Conte has been playing, he's been ultra defensive and no support for the front men? It's like almost like you've got 2 or 3 up against their back four, like you just have it and see what you do with it with no real runners.
I think one of the big things is that they play so deep, don't they? So where Son is used to running 20, 30 yards at goal and winning the ball high up, now he's travelling 60, 70 yards up the pitch, and that becomes very difficult as well.
Yeah, well, Charlie, one last question to you before we have to move on. I suppose the question is, whatever happens, it's going to be a very busy summer for Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many issues. I think the Kane one is such a big one. You know, can they extend his contract? Obviously, that would be the dream situation for Spurs. And at the very least, can they fend off any interest? And then, the new manager, bringing players in. There's a big rebuilding job there. And it's just down to whoever comes in. Do they want to go down the more patient route Glenn mentioned, or do they want to go and sign some big name players? It's not really been their style, but it's going to be huge. And if they get top 4, then that changes the complexion of it. So big summer coming up and a big couple of months coming up before the end of that.
It sure is. Charlie, thank you for joining us on Football Focus. And I'm sure, like you just said, a very busy summer and couple of weeks ahead.